This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Cathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Cathy Worthington. Today on Late Boomers, we're thrilled to introduce you to Richard Bangs, who is known as the father of modern adventure travel. He's been named one of the 100 great explorers of the last 100 years and is a pioneer in world exploration with a purpose. He has written more than 20 books.
And I'm Mary Elkins. I met Richard a decade or two ago on a river rafting trip, not long after he started his company, his travel company, Sobeck. And since he has led first descents of 35 rivers, he's scaled mountain peaks and put uncharted places on the map. He was one of the original founders of Expedia, and he's produced and directed award-winning adventure films and television shows. Many of us boomers want to forge new frontiers in our later years, Richard. So let's hear more about you and about some great trips you recommend for us. Welcome to Late Boomers.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I think we are a big tribe, so I hope we can find some fellow spirits in this journey here.
Yeah. There's a picture of you in your book, The Art of Living Dangerously, taken when you were 11 on what looks like a hand-built raft on the Potomac River. Where did this drive for wanderlust and danger come from?
I think a lot of it has to do with upbringing. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and my father was a career officer at the CIA. So I think I was exposed very early on to sort of international goings on, and I think became aware more than most people, I believe, of the sort of interconnectedness of all things, and it was forever curious, particularly when my father would come home and explain what was happening in different parts of the world, about which I knew little, and I hoped to see if I could understand more. So that kind of set me off on this journey. I also was an avid river runner and spelunker and climber
at 11 years old.
Well, not at 11, but throughout my high school years, I took off and became a member of the Canoe Cruisers Association, a Washington D.C. based group that did pioneering canoe trips all over the country, including down the Colorado through the Grand Canyon. So I got inspired by a lot of people around me, including family, in early years.
Wow, good.
Wow. Yeah, it's something that not too many people do. And as you're known as the father of adventure travel, talk about that and how it differs from a conventional travel, and also to talk about how it changes people, and maybe a little about how it changed you.
That's a great question. If we dial back, and I think we're all of an age that can, when people took vacations in the 50s and 60s, it was primarily to be horizontal on a beach someplace, and active adventure travel really didn't exist. There were a lot of sort of mythopoetic personalities that I think we all admired during that era, from Edmund Hillary to Jacques Cousteau and Thor Heyerdahl and others. But what they did just seemed to be too inaccessible for us mere mortals. They were great heroes, but who could follow? And then a lot of things came together. There was a beautiful sort of inflection point that happened in the 70s where airline deregulation came into being. Prior to that, IATA, the International Air Transport Association, controlled fare prices for all airlines internationally. And it was insanely expensive to travel to Europe or beyond. It was, typically $2,000, which would be 20,000 in today's dollars, to fly overseas. And with deregulation, suddenly the world was more accessible via airplane for much of the world. Many Americans, for the first time, discovered that they could travel, including myself. And then there were lots of sort of technological advances that allowed us to. I started off running rivers overseas in Africa that allowed me to bring portable gear and pack it onto an airplane and then unpack it uh, in Africa and then head on down an unknown river. Prior to the 70s, that wasn't feasible to do. And there was a whole new sensibility, I think, that came out of World War II, the baby boomers, where people began to look inward as to how they could improve themselves by through travel. And that had really not been a dynamic that was expressed in any large way. Mostly people took a vacation to rest and get away from their job. But now people would lean into it and were looking for ways to improve their health, through travel, doing treks and other activities. And they were looking to learn and to come back better informed and uh, better connected to issues around the world. And I personally, I think it was a very wonderful transition that took place. And as you alluded to, Mary, before, um, almost everybody who takes an adventure travel trip comes out the other side different than when he departed, um, because it's a very intense and profound uh, and wonderful experience to challenge yourself along with other people and achieve, a relatively short-term goal. Much of us spend lives trying to achieve a goal of financial freedom or something else that's usually long-term. But to be able to sort of compact that into an expedition or an adventure, and feel the great self actualization, let's say, that comes from climbing a mountain, from rafting a wild river. All these things are just really wonderful feelings that I think brings clarity and sort of reevaluation of how life should be lived.
A little bit terrifying to me too, but
A
let's
little bit of fear is a good thing.
yeah. And can you tell us, what does travel with a purpose mean to you?
Well, I spent the first 20 years sort of exploring. So we would look at the map and find places that um, didn't have a lot of relief or information, and then we would seek them out uh, and explore. But I noticed it was hard not to notice after 20 years or so of exploration that many of the places that had given us such delight and such energy were gone. They were dammed. Their rivers were dammed. Deserts were expanded. Forests were felled. There were a lot of timber poachers in parts of the world that I personally loved and visited. Indonesia is a prime example. And generally, the world was a much a much lesser place than when I had started off exploring. So I decided to get involved with something that we called Adventures with Purpose, which is a PBS series that we ran with for about 10 years, and a book and a Yahoo effort. Um, and it was to go to these places that are magical places, treasure places, and look at the issues that are relevant to a particular destination, and then amplify them and try to understand the lessons that might be learned that could be applied anywhere on the planet, or at least other places. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a mission to expose and to bring to life solutions that others have found around the world.
That is a good explanation of that. Thank you very much. Tell us a little bit about your book, The Art of Living Dangerously, and about some of the most challenging and dangerous places you've experienced. Are you ever afraid?
Oh yes, as I said earlier, I think fear is a
Yeah.
good thing,
Uh-huh.
and I've often been afraid, but I think there's been a sort of a judicial approach to to many of the encounters that I've had. Trying to assess risk and determine what degree of risk is acceptable. I mean,
Mhm.
the book is 50 years of adventure travel from the time that I started, so back in 1973, until the present, and so it chronicles many of the pioneering expeditions that we did in those early decades, and then new explorations that I got involved in. Some of it was technology driven. Uh, as Mary said, I was part of the team that started Expedia and got early involved with internet communication possibilities. The fact that
Mhm.
we did a series of virtual expeditions where we took the burgeoning technology in the 90s down to Antarctica and broadcast live, the first time that had ever been done. Um, and then, did live chats from Antarctica, and we did that in the Galapagos. And then we started to take that concept around the world. Uh, and at Microsoft, where I worked for a spell, we took celebrities to
Oh,
follow their passion. And this is also in the book. So we would take Martha Stewart sea kayaking in Newfoundland, and Lyle Lovett on a motorcycle trip the length of Chile. And we took
oh,
Were they good travelers?
yes, I think without exception, all the people that we took on these trips. Well, part of
You
it was
took Mick Jagger too, didn't you?
yes, yeah. We took. He was performing in Mexico City, which is I think around 8,000 feet. I'm sure I'm off by
mm-hmm.
something, but
Mm-hmm.
it's got a high altitude. So he came to Mexico a week and a half in advance, and hired us to take him up some of the volcanoes so he could get in good shape and dance the stage in
Yeah.
Mexico City without altitude affecting him.
Yeah, because he's in phenomenal shape. But do
Yeah,
you
oh
have
boy, is
close
he!
friends? Do you have
I just
close
saw him. Yeah,
friends? Do you have
yeah.
close friends that do these trips with you that help plan it with you and decide what's going to be our next adventure? Or are you kind of more solo and you do it on your own?
No, no. I mean, the company, which is now called MTSobeck, standing for Mountain Travel, we merged the two companies in the 90s, and uh, it's a small company, but we have about 40 people in the office, and
No.
we we design and orchestrate and conduct trips all over the world. Um, and we've been doing this for 50 years. So yeah, we take
Yeah.
a lot of well-known people. Many celebrities have traveled with us. I took Jeff Bezos on 3 trips, and Bill Gates took him to
Hmm.
Antarctica. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Wow.
many others. Barry Diller to Botswana. It's a long list at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's cooperative thing. There are many people involved in exploring and finding new trips. We usually have about a 20% uh, uh, new product mission every year. So our catalog is this
So
dream
you're
book.
Yeah.
creating and
Yeah.
creating all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you talk a little more about some of the more challenging or even dangerous yet totally rewarding trips that you've taken?
Uh, there are a lot. So, um, I mean, if I move right here, you can see there's a painting of New Guinea, and you probably can't see it, but there was a doctor who was a painter who was on a first descent of a river we did with the BBC in New Guinea, and we had a boat capsize that was carrying a lot of our vital gear, and
Oh.
it was being swept downstream. Classic. This is Indiana Jones towards a waterfall downstream. And so I was able to hail the BBC helicopter um, and zoom downstream. And there's a picture of me jumping out of the helicopter right there.
Oh no. Oh
Onto the
Were
no.
you on a line at least?
no. There's no line, so I just had to jump from the helicopter onto the back of the raft and wrestle it over to shore. Before it went over the waterfall. So
Oh my
when
goodness.
Oh, with you on
it's
it
in,
before.
well, yeah, I
And
would
you
have been,
did
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah.
a huge waterfall?
No, I didn't go over the waterfall. We got the raft to
Yeah.
shore.
Yeah. No, I got that.
I have been over waterfalls before, but
Oh, gee.
so and another
That's
scary thing. I mean, you're starting to poke the bear here.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we've had a lot of crocodile and hippo bites over the years,
Oh,
and
yeah.
those are always a little bit disconcerting.
I think
Uh,
so.
yeah, we had one. We did the
Oh.
first descent of a river called the Zambezi in southern Africa. Um, and we had LeVar Burton with us, and we were doing an ABC special uh, with LeVar Burton looking for his roots. And about halfway down the river, we'd gotten a lot of good footage. It was a spectacular trip. And uh, LeVar said he wanted to learn how to kayak. So we put him in a kayak, and he's merrily paddling around. And kayaks are very small boats. Only a few inches from the surface of the water, and a raft out in front of him suddenly had this explosion, and a crocodile bit the boat, and LeVar was just a few feet away from this and was quick to act. He took his paddles and he sort of zoomed over to shore, almost lightning speed, and he grabbed one of the walkie-talkies, called in the helicopter, jumped in the helicopter, and left. And we never saw him again. So,
Oh
Well,
my goodness.
yeah, that's frightening. And how did the helicopter get so close? I mean, you must have had two mountains on the side of you.
well, I mean, there are a lot of big beaches on a river like the Zambezi, particularly at the water level that we did. So it was not difficult for a helicopter to land. And we were moving the film
Boy,
around by
talk
helicopter.
about an instant reaction.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
then he
yeah.
left without saying goodbye.
No, he didn't say goodbye. I'm still waiting for him to say goodbye.
Waving. Bye,
That's
I'm out of here.
that's weird.
Yeah.
Anything
So,
else that comes to mind dangerous and scary?
oh
I'm
boy,
sure a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean the book is filled with stories. So, and some of them are true. So, it's,
Okay, then everybody will have to read the book.
Oh,
yeah.
you
But you've
will, you
you you've
will.
also flown with the Blue Angels. What was that like?
Uh, so they have a journalist program,
Oh,
and they invited me as part of the program. And you go through, you go to Miramar in Southern California and do a
I
3 day.
was just there.
You were okay. Did you do
Yeah.
the Top Gun thing?
Uh, well, I watched it.
Oh, okay. So they put you through the Top Gun course, and one of the things that they do is they put you in a model um, F-16, I think it was, hanging above a pool, and you put on all your flight gear, um, and then they want to make sure that you are comfortable enough and you can escape in case there's a waterborne accident, an ocean accident. So they drop the plane into the pool, and they have divers there, and then you have to unbuckle and find the exit and get out. And it was not difficult. They dropped it in, and I held my breath and swam over to the door and got out fine. But then they said, "Oh, we have to do it again." So I said, "Okay," and got in the plane, and they lifted it up and they dropped it, but they turned off the lights. So so it's like, whoa, and I finally figured out how to get out, but it was close before a diver gave me his oxygen. And then they said, "Okay, we got one more time." So then they put me up and they turned off the lights and they turned it upside down and dropped me in. And
God,
I could not find my way out. I was
this is
stuck.
hardcore. This is very
This
hardcore.
this
Oh
was
man.
hardcore. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You can
somebody gave
Wow.
yeah, one of the divers rescued me and got me out. So I was thinking, well, maybe I don't qualify, but they took me up and they teach you a couple of tricks because they don't want you to. They go up to 5, 6 Gs. They don't want you to pass out. So there's one thing called pooping the watermelon. It's an exercise where you try to push all the blood from your head down. um,
Oh,
and the
interesting.
pilots, I think they get some sort of satisfaction out of this, or maybe there's an internal conflict. But they try to get you to pass out or
Oh.
to upchuck. And I was able to poop the watermelon. Your whole sort of vision sort of closes in on you as you're getting to higher G's, and you feel like you're going to pass out, and then you push it back. So I was okay with that. But on some of the loop-de-loops, my stomach didn't make it. So there was a little bag, and they have a little camera that they take a
Oh,
video of you.
gee. Oh,
So so I
thank you.
so I have this video on my shelf. I've never looked
Oh,
at it. I've never looked at it.
I get it. I
Yeah,
I
get
guess
why.
not. I
yeah,
guess not.
yeah.
Well, they're amazing though, because when I was at Miramar, I saw the air show and they did perform, and I understand that they perform like 18 inches apart.
Yeah, yeah. There've been
It's
some accidents over the years, so but
yeah.
they're
Inevitable.
Glad I didn't
precision.
glad I didn't see them. So,
Yeah,
moving on, in your other new book, 50 Best Adventures on Earth, you've curated trips for all ages and all abilities.
yep.
Would you talk about some of the places that would be ideal for older people that might not scare them as much as, a crocodile bite or a boat capsizing,
Yeah,
but would be amazing mind-bending experiences for them and give them the feeling that they've really accomplished something and or
sure.
made a difference.
I mean, there are many classics, and I would like to believe that every trip in this upcoming book is something that somebody over 50 can enjoy. I will share that at Sobeck, um, our our average age is around 63.
Oh,
Um,
Mhm.
so I think we appeal to a certain age group and clientele. Um,
Mhm.
and there are many classics. Of course, when you get to a point where you can enjoy the time off and travel, many people look to the classics, and those are things like the Inca Trail in in Peru, where you get to see Machu Picchu. It's
Mhm.
also interesting. We've been doing this for 50 years, and we had a much younger crowd, and it was much more adrenaline fueled in the early years. But things have
Mhm.
gotten softer, and our demographic has aged with us. So let's
Mhm.
say you're interested in doing the Inca Trail, which is a profoundly meaningful and beautiful experience, but you don't like the idea of camping, and that has become a real uh, a real I guess, mindset for a lot of people.
Well,
I can
older
relate.
people have some back issues sometimes, and sleeping
Yeah.
on the ground may not work.
Yes, exactly. And then
Mhm.
we always have porters, so you don't have to carry anything on any of our treks. But if you do the traditional Inca Trail, you do camp out, and you also camp at altitude. Um, so we put together several years ago now uh, a series of lodges. So you can they're called the Mountain Lodges of Peru. So you can stay in these beautiful eco lodges along the way,
Ah,
and have porters carry everything for you. Um, uh, I just came back from seeing the mountain gorillas in
ah,
Uganda, which
Oh,
is a fantastic trip.
beautiful.
I recommend everybody do that. And we have several departures both in Rwanda and Uganda. And I just came back from Uganda, and my son came with me, um, 29 years old, and he had just been in an accident at work. Um, so he didn't think he could walk. It can be a mile, it can be 4 miles or something to see the mountain gorillas. So we just put together a sedan chair for him. And actually, the locals have several of these sedan chairs, and so they carried him like somebody out of King Solomon's mines.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, and he loved it. I mean, it was great. He got to see it, so
I bet he did.
it was accessible, and it's something that anybody who might have some challenges when it comes to ambulatory adventures, can utilize that. So,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Tell us,
although I would be walking.
and can you tell us a little bit more about how adventure travel helps to preserve the Earth's ecosystems and diversify cultures?
that's such a great question. Um, uh, and I think there are multiple ways to answer that, and multiple reasons why I think this type of travel is good for the planet. Um, Firstly, it does celebrate diversity, um, more than almost anything else. Most tourism today, I think adventure travel might be about 10% of all tourism, but most tourism today is a very insular experience. So the best surprise is no surprise epistemology, where you go to some resort in some exotic locale, and you check in, and you order a cheeseburger on the menu. Let's say you're in Burma or something, or Myanmar, and then you come down to the lobby and you watch some dancers perform something that you don't understand, and it's all flashy and beautiful and rhythmic. But there's no interaction between you and the people who have been brought in to perform. And then you move around on insulated, air-conditioned buses, and you don't really get to understand or know the people, the culture, uh, you know, with whom you are sharing landscape. And the adventure travel dynamic is so much different, because the idea is to have one-on-one encounters with the people and the culture along the way, so that you really do get to shake hands and look them in the eye and talk to them, and they us. Uh, and it can bring down all sorts of barriers, and lead to, I think, a better appreciation and understanding of the others, of differences, but also it showcases the universalities of humanity, and how we're all ultimately the same. I led a trip to North Korea, um, and
Oh,
that was
When did you do that?
that's been about 8 years ago now. Um,
and
but
you all came back.
we all came back, and I think we all came back feeling enlightened in some way, and feeling that we made a small difference. In that
Mhm.
we met many, North Koreans throughout the tour, and saw much of the country, uh, and it was enlightening, I think, to meet children and their parents who had these terrible opinions about us as Americans. They generally believe that we wake up every day trying to think of a way to destroy North Korea. They've been taught that,
Oh,
um, and there are posters all over Pyongyang and throughout the country, of American soldiers bayoneting babies and things like this. It's
Oh.
Oh, it's awful. Um, but
yeah.
they're taught that. And for them to be able to meet us and shake our hands and share a story or a joke or a song, um, I think brought down a lot of that disinformation very, very quickly. Um,
Oh.
and they were delighted with that
Mhm.
experience, and we of them. And I think that that's not unusual, uh, traveling to different cultures around the world. Uh, and it's one of the benefits of this type of travel, I think. As far as
Oh, yeah.
the environment, there's nothing better than to showcase in an emotional way, I think, uh, how the planet is being reshaped by some of our uh, some of our policies
Mhm.
that are not as healthy as they could be. Uh, you know, Global climate change is certainly the most evident one. But there are many other situations where you can be exposed by traveling to threats to a region, to a people's, uh, to wildlife, to forest, et cetera, et cetera. You can see those, and they're all very abstract if you are at home and you read about it in the newspaper or see it in the
Mhm.
news. But when you're there is this sort of emotional connection because you are seeing and feeling and experiencing the magic of a particular place, and it becomes very personal. There is an emotional connection. It's like family. And then when you return, hopefully, if you have learned or you discover that the area that was so meaningful to you on a visit is threatened, that you can become a constituent to help avoid
Mhm.
one of these catastrophes. You can contribute time, money, voice, um, editorial. And travelers are the ones that do this because they've seen it. They
Mhm.
understand it. They know it. So um,
It's that's so beautiful that you said that because so much discussion around, oh, there's no climate change or all that comes from people who have never traveled,
yes,
That's
who have
right.
nothing to compare, who don't relate to any of those landscapes. They can deny it because they haven't seen it and they
That's
don't see it
right.
happening, like with the icebergs and the way they're disappearing and all that stuff. But if you haven't gone and seen it, you don't have any heart for it. You just don't care.
Yeah.
that's so true. I've been to so many places where there used to be a resort that was strategically
Oh.
placed. So we did a river trip down the Jordan River from its
Mm.
source in Mount Hermon on the Syrian Jordanian border, all the way to the Dead Sea. Um, and at the Dead Sea, you can stay at these resorts that are about a mile from from the water. They used to be water that would lap up on their decks, but the mostly Israelis, but also Jordanians, have diverted the water, almost 100% of it, for cotton and other thirsty crops. Um,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and that's a shame, and it should be. There are many discussions on how to resolve this problem, um, but it's ultimately a political problem. And then
Yeah.
you
And
mentioned, yeah, you mentioned ice. There's so many places in the world you can go and see the remains of um, once extraordinary glaciers, once magnificent glaciers, who have retreated so much
yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
that there are resorts that are now miles away from what used to be a glacier that lapped by its front door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear more about that, but I'm also curious about how many countries you have visited and where you have yet to explore.
Great. Uh, I haven't put pen to paper. Um, figure that out, and things change all the time. I mean, South Sudan is a new country. I was there this year, um, and I have not been to Timor Leste, which is also a relatively new country. I'd love to go there. It's used to be part of the Indonesian or the Malay archipelago. Used to be part of Indonesia, but has found independence. Um, and there are quite a few other places that I have not been. And it's one of the ironies of travel, and that's the more you do travel, the more you recognize you have yet to see.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
So true.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is your favorite?
that I've been to or hoping to
Yeah,
go
that
to.
you've been to.
Um, Boy, there's so many, and they're all. That's like trying to pick a favorite
Favorite
child.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard
But
to
I
pick
do have
one.
some that I go back to repeatedly. Ethiopia, which is where we started, Sobeck, has always been something very dear to my heart, and it's a unique destination. It's unlike any other place in Africa or the world. Um,
Why is that?
well, it's a mountainous um, uh, kingdom, well, former kingdom. Uh, it's got an average elevation of about 8,000 feet, and many of the highest mountains in Africa are there. And it also has the lowest point in Africa, the Danakil Depression, I think around 300 feet below sea level. So there's a lot of relief.
Wow.
It's mostly a mountain kingdom area. And the people who live in Ethiopia, the Amhara and other tribal groups, but Amharas are the prominent one, um, uh, are a unique blend of Hamites, Semites, and Cushites. So you've probably noticed that Ethiopians have a different look, like Iman, the model. She's actually from Somalia, but it borders Ethiopia, and it's the same sort of genetic uh, um, unique uniqueness. So high cheekbones, uh, aquiline noses, and coffee-colored skin. So very different than much of the rest of Africa. And it's a spectacular country. It's got the churches of Lalibela, some of the oldest churches in the world. It's where King Solomon's mines supposedly are. It's where the Ark of the Covenant supposedly was hidden. A lot of history, a lot of culture. I love Ethiopia, but there are many other parts of the world I love. I love Indonesia. Been back many times, and there.
So you're not afraid to repeat a trip. If you love it, you'll go
Yes,
again,
exactly,
even though you've got so many more to see.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, has geopolitics affected your travels?
all the time. So we have to be somewhat
Yeah.
uh, nimble and
Careful.
flexible. I was in Sudan um,
Yeah.
last year, and it was just as some of the bombs started to go off in Khartoum, and now Sudan is a wreck. It's probably the worst landscape I think in the world at the moment.
And the famine.
The famine is terrible, and it's a internecine war that's going on between two rival powers, and um, and I think hundreds of thousands of people have fled into Chad and other areas to try to get out. Many people dead, many, and much of the infrastructure destroyed. It's sort of Showcase Hotel in Khartoum has been utterly destroyed, and it's not as much in the news as other conflicts around the world, but it is a disaster, and it's sad to see.
And it's spreading to South Sudan too.
Yes, it is. South Sudan is where most of the
So
oil
when
is.
you come across issues with geopolitics and you've got a trip planned, I mean, how do you get into the country, or do you just have to change the trip completely?
Uh, we've certainly had both situations. Um,
Oh,
where was it? I know a few years ago we had a trekking trip to Algeria, um, that got canceled because an ISIS group had killed a French tourist and taken over much of the Hogar Mountains where we were going to do our trek. But we had a full trip, so I was able to switch them to Ethiopia, and we went trekking in the Simeon Mountains instead, and it may have been a superior experience.
Mm.
Uh, but yes,
Wow.
we politics gets in the way, natural disasters get in the way, um,
Mhm.
uh, economic disasters get in the way. So there are all sorts of things to deal with. Uh, it's
And as we're
Yeah.
taping this today, we just got the news about Syria.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a
yes,
big upset and we have to wait to see how that sifts out and who's going to be
Right.
in
yet
charge there and stuff.
yet nobody really understands
Right.
where this is going to net out. But most Syrians, or many Syrians around the world, have been celebrating. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's
We
yeah,
And
don't
some of them
know.
want to come back, the ones that had to
yes,
leave.
oh yes, I
Yeah,
have
very
several.
interesting.
I have several Syrian friends,
Mm.
and some have families, back in Aleppo and other regions. So they're enthused. They're hopeful that this will make a difference.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. We all want to make a difference in the world. And I've heard a lot about volunteer travel. Can you explain what it is? And do you have any recommendations for us and late boomers?
Yeah, um, and it's a very significant part of the sort of travel landscape where
Mhm.
folks can sign up to help um, uh, in a particular region, and so you're working while you're on your vacation. Let's say I was part of one years ago in Madagascar with a woman named Alison Jolly, who is sort of the Jane Goodall of lemurs,
Oh,
and there were uh, a number of people who were able to sign up and come and help her with her research. So you spent 10 days or so sort of logging the behavior of lemurs, which would contribute to her overall assessment of and hopefully understanding of lemur behavior.
Mm.
Um,
mhm.
and there are many of these um, around the world. Some are reactive to natural disasters. In Nepal, um, after the earthquake, we offered a series of trips uh, to travel to Nepal, which is a very important part of our repertoire. Um, but to come to Nepal and help rebuild houses, help people relocate, and and generally, help out in a disaster, and that's happened many times over the years. So um,
Mhm.
it's a really rewarding way to travel because you do come back feeling that you've contributed and perhaps you've made a difference. So
Mm.
Yes, indeed,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's something I'd love to do, but I don't necessarily want to go into a war torn place at all.
well, I don't think
So,
you can do volunteerism in a war-torn place, but but
yeah,
but after natural disasters, it often makes sense. They look for volunteers.
yeah, yeah. So, Richard, what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
Uh-huh. Uh, well, I think that it's usually a good thing to get out of your comfort zone and to stretch and to
Mm.
try something that's new and different. And I would say, particularly for the over 50 crowd, because there's a tendency to sort of fall back into the familiar when we reach a certain age and try to eliminate risk um, and
Mhm.
and not put oneself in a situation where there may not be um, climate controlled or uh, or complete comfort, I guess. And it's almost always a good thing if you're willing to take a step off the path and try something different, new, and have fresh eyes, do a reset. I mean, there's nothing like watching a young child with enormous eyes seeing something wonderful for the first time and reacting with giddiness and excitement. And everything's a possibility when you're 4 and 5 years old. There could be dragons, there could be Santa Claus, and it's all exciting stuff. And I think that this type of travel sort of rekindles that sort of youthful eyesight, where you're bending, you're turning corners that you've never turned before, and you're seeing things that are thoroughly unfamiliar, and discovering things about places that you didn't know and about yourself, I think, in the process. So I think, I guess, a message is, don't be too afraid to try something along these lines, and it may be utterly rewarding in a way that was not anticipated. So
brilliant.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm signing up. Not
Okay.
sure where I'm going to go, but I want to talk to Richard more, and I know the people that are listening would love to talk to you more. Thank you so much. Our
Thank you, guys.
Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Richard Bangs, author, world-renowned explorer, entrepreneur, and father of adventure travel. And you can reach out to Richard via his website, richardbangs.com. That's RICHARDBANGS.com. And I wish we had another 2 hours to talk to you to learn more about these exciting adventures. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we should do a remote one on a trip.
Okay.
I like that idea. The three of us, we're coming.
If you can
Very
get
good.
good internet connection and talk to us.
We can.
Oh, we're all going?
Yes,
okay.
of course. Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Well, we want to urge our listeners to tune in next week.
Yeah.
And we'll be meeting TEDx speaker Deborah Heiser, founder of the Mentor Project. And please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube, and take us along in the car and on walks on your favorite audio platform. Let us know what gets you inspired. We are on Instagram at I am Cathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. Please share the Late Boomers podcast info with your friends who may not yet be listening to podcasts. Bring them along for the ride or for the travel. Thanks again, Richard.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Cathy and Mary. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.